countdown, eh?
Yay!
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, the King Saga 7847. And today, I am very privileged to have two authors who are part of the SFF Spotlight 24 initiative. I guess we call it an initiative. Yeah. I guess event initiative. You both, if that qualifies. Two awesome members of the writing community, very well known and popular authors and wonderful human beings. Phil Parker and Simon Kewin. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you today?
Thank you very much. Really good. Thank you, Paul, and really glad to be here. Thank you so much for inviting us. It's going to be great fun. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, and same for me. I've just recovered from a bout of COVID, so it's been a bit of a poor week, but I'm feeling absolutely fine now and delighted to be here.
Fantastic. Sorry to hear that about the COVID. Glad you're all recovering.
Yeah, it's fine.
Phil's recovering from his latest cooking adventure.
I was going to say, yes, I'm recovering from a disastrous gluten-free pizza recipe, and I still need counselling. So if there's anybody out there that's got answers for how to cook gluten-free pizza, I would really like to know. Thank you very much indeed. I warned Paul that I was going to be like Gordon Ramsay, effing and blinding all over the place if things went wrong.
You know what? That's not a bad act to follow, considering how successful he is. So that's all good. You challenge your inner Gordon. That is awesome. Well, gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for being here. Extremely honored. So you are both part of, I mentioned it at the onset, the SFF Spotlight 24 event initiative. What exactly is that, and how are you each involved with that?
Okay, shall I go first, Simon?
Yeah, you start because I'm involved because you're involved, Phil. So you start.
Yes, we had a conversation. The person that created this is someone that I know that you know well, Paul, Holly, and Holly is just a fabulous writer. And I'm a huge fan of all of her books, and she is part of a writing community here in the UK and Ireland that we meet upon a regular basis online to have a chat. Which reminds me, Simon, I've got to get you in that group as well. So I must do that next time. Sorry, by the by. And it was during that group that Holly said that she was organising the Fantasy and Science Fiction Spotlight that's going to be taking place in Shrewsbury on the 29th of September. So literally 4 weeks tomorrow. And it's a brilliant event. It's the first time this has been held in Shrewsbury, which has got a huge writing community and a huge sort of community of people that are into video games and sort of artwork and so on. So a really diverse culture. We're all going to be there's a whole bunch of us who are science fiction and fantasy authors. We're going to be reading from our books. We're on different panels. There's writing workshops, book signings, and it's going to be the sort of thing that is taking place over 2 floors of what's called the Nerdy Cafe in Shrewsbury, Nerdy. It's a lovely name, the Nerdy Cafe, and it starts at 11 o'clock on the Sunday morning, running through till about 5 o'clock, roughly speaking, but on 2 floors. So there's lots of things for people to do, and there will be other sort of workshops going on there as well. That's being organised by different people who are sponsoring sort of the event as well. So what I'm excited about is that it's such a diverse group of people coming from all different sort of types of modern culture, even down to sort of, as I say, video games and sort of stuff like that. So it's going to be exciting. Simon?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have too much more to add to that. I mean, although I'm fairly close to Shrewsbury, in fact, where I live, I didn't know about this until Phil got in touch with me and said, "Are you interested in coming along?" Because I've known Phil for I guess 2 or 3 years from reading each other's books, and
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
He said, "I think you're quite near here. Would you like to come?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to come." And that was how I got involved. So I'm also doing a reading, and I think we're on a panel together, aren't we? Phil,
I think so. Yeah, I think so. We're certainly sort of we're doing readings together, mate. That's what it is. We're doing readings. Yeah. And Holly asked me if I knew any science fiction authors, and because we wanted to expand the science fiction sort of database, if you like. And I said, yes, I know someone who's an absolutely brilliant science fiction author, and I absolutely love his books no end. And he would be perfect. So yeah, because Simon Paul is one of those people, I don't know if you know, who he is something of a hybrid. He's someone who writes absolutely fabulous science fiction, but then he also dabbles into fantasy as well, which I think is quite a mixture. I don't know how you do it, mate.
I do. I mean, I would absolutely consider myself probably a fantasy writer before I'm a science fiction writer.
Oh, really?
I think so. I mean, the first proper books I wrote were fantasy. The first trilogy were fantasy. I don't really know how people don't do that, if I'm honest with you, Phil. In all things writing, I bow to Ursula Le Guin, basically. She's, I aspire to be like she was, and she just moved between them effortlessly. She would write fantasy and science fiction, and many other things as well. And that I don't. I think when I'm writing fantasy, I kind of long to write science fiction because it's a bit more structured, and you have to follow like science. And when I'm writing science fiction, I think, oh God, I wish I could write some fantasy where you just make it up, basically what's happening. So I move between them. Yeah.
Well, maybe we're just not as talented as you are, Simon, that we can't just dabble back and forth between science fiction and fantasy. Kudos to you that you can do that. So and that Le Guin is obviously is certainly not a bad inspiration. Iconic as she is so I definitely need to hear more about that and both of your works. I've read a bit of Phil's and loved it. Vanaheim, that was an awesome book. So and I really need to continue in the series. Just TBRs are so long, but but quickly though about this SFF Spotlight 24. And again, shout out to Holly Tinsley. She is one of my absolute favorite people in the world. And of course, an absolutely phenomenal writer, the Princess of Grimdark herself. Just read everything Holly writes. And
yes, absolutely.
And you're in good standing, right?
And can I just give a plug to her latest book, The Hallows, which I think it's her best so far. Okay. It just is so original that she intimidates me, if I'm honest, Paul, because I think she's just so talented because she invents ideas that are so completely new to anything that you've ever read in fantasy that I just think, where has that idea come from? How have you come up with that? Because and then, half a chapter later, there's another completely different, brand new idea that's just been thrown in. And it's like, how do you do this? How do you get to be so original? So she's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Yeah. Holly Tinsley fan club here.
Yeah, definitely card carrying members for sure.
Yeah.
She is phenomenal. So Holly is the organizer. You two both are participating. You're doing readings, are in panels. So can you talk about some of the other authors that I know there's probably a long list, but some of the authors that are attending this event?
Yeah. We've got well, again, I'm going to be like a huge fanboy, I think, when I get there, because it's like you were saying about being in Scotland last week for the con. There are so many people there who are people that I've wanted to meet for ages because I just so admire their work. There's Alex Bradshaw for a start, who has just been turned into a sort of semi-finalist in this year's SPFBO with his latest book, Trollgrave. and so deserving. I said to him just before he entered, I said, if that doesn't get into at least the semi-finals, I'm demanding a recount from Mark Lawrence, because I just find it astonishing that he sort of gets you wrapped up in Viking culture to such an extent that you feel as though you're in amongst it, really, and it's just absolutely sort of wonderful. There's I've got his name just gone straight out of my head. Sorry. Oh God, I hate it when this happens. This is old age for you. Steve, it'll come back to me in a minute. Has also just entered SPFBO with Order of the Shadow Dragon, and he is going to be there to sort of in the workshops and panels as well. Simon, anybody else that you can think of? Well, I get my brain back in gear because they've turned to tofu.
No, I'm trying to think of names as well. I mean, several people from the British and Irish Writing Society community. My brain's gone to mush as well. Sorry, mate. Well, we'll have to. I mean, there's lots of graphics and images with all the names on. We'll have to put them in the note.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. It's Steve McKinnon, right? Order of the Shadow Dragon. Steve McKinnon? Is that his name?
Steve McKinnon, that's it. Yes, thank you. Yeah, well done, mate. Well done. That's it. Yeah. And there's Stephen Arian as well.
Oh, yes. Awesome.
Which is, just absolutely huge. Emily Inkpen is going to be there, who is doing sort of fantastic stuff as well. There is, one of the guys who I think is just the nicest guy possible, who is chair of the British Fantasy Society, is David Green.
Yes,
as well, who just writes phenomenal books, and so he's there as well. So sort of whole bunch of people. I've just brought up the other image, and. Eleanor Gray as well is there, because I'm on a panel with her. Should have had all this ready. God.
Well, speak of the devil, and she shall appear. The wonderful Holly Tinsley. We members of the Holly Tinsley fan club are here and honored by the presence of the Princess of Grimdark. Thank you so much, Holly, for popping by to say hello, and of course for helping to organize this chat with two of the wonderful authors from SFF Spotlight 24. So
it's cool. It's cool that you managed to summon Holly by saying her name. She's just
we've invoked her. So
something like that happens in Harry Potter. Apparently, I'm not sure if there's any connection. Well done, Holly.
So in that vein, we know that there's things like readings there, and there's panels. What other sorts of items are part of the agenda for this event, this SFF Spotlight 24 event?
There's a number of I'm just bringing up the image that I've got now. There's Emma Adams, who is the other person that's on my panel, and we're talking about making the magic happen. So magic systems in fantasy, which should be I think a really interesting issue that we're going to be sort of chatting about. So there's that. We've got also LARPing to L for LI Lit RPG. So the way that gaming and writing are intersected, which I think should be a good one. There's a panel that we've called Ready Draft 1. So it's getting started with your novel. I think
I'm on a panel I think I'm doing a sci-fi world building panel.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think I am. I definitely am.
Yeah. Stephen Arian's doing that one with you, mate. Yeah. And there's one which is also about combat in sort of the fact of combat, if you like, putting it into sort of fiction, which is being done by a brilliant sort of guy who is actually sort of a sword sort of expert as well, who is he's actually sort of incredibly well trained in the longsword as well. Lee Connolly.
Yes, Lee Connolly. Fantastic.
He's absolutely amazing with the sword. So he's going to be talking about that as well. So there's I think almost you could say there's lots of different issues that are all connected with science fiction and fantasy in some form or another.
I know, as with all these things, the main thing is the people you bump into at the coffee bar or the bar. You know, the conversations you have, and that's the joy of them, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I absolutely agree. That was my experience a couple of weeks ago in Scotland for WorldCon. It was all about, the panels are fantastic, and you can get lost and booking yourself an agenda where you attend 3, 4, 5, 6 panels a day. However, I found that it just became about connecting with people who you have these online relationships with, but you haven't met in person, and then you just keep bumping into people and you have these wonderful conversations and you get to know them better, and then next thing you know, you're on to another one. And that's how I spent most of my time at WorldCon. So I predict something similar perhaps for
I think it will be. Plus the fact as well that a lot of the writers have got tables at this event, so there's going to be lots of opportunities for people who aren't writers to come along and buy books and get them signed by the authors as well, which for me is one of the things I've got over here. So many books that are signed by writers, and they mean the absolute world to me. It's not just about having the book; it's the fact that the author has signed it. So there'll be a lot of book signing going on as well, which I think should be fun too.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. And not just you said people who aren't writers will be getting their book signed. I mean, there'll be lots of people who are writers. Books. This is what worries me, really, is how many books I'll come away with rather than. But,
it's hard. I brought back a bag from, and I felt I was somewhat restrained. I think my wife was proud of me, and I only brought back a certain amount. But I mean, it's just such a treat to have a signed copy of one of those authors that you admire their work on your shelf. I have tons. Too many, but we won't talk about that right now, about my obsession. But you'll see a bunch of Hollies back there. Actually, everything but the Hallows, which is on order, but I have everything else that's But that's phenomenal. And so just to clarify, so this is clearly open to authors beyond the UK. Like there's authors coming potentially from.
It's open to anyone that wants to sort of turn up. I think the one thing that's really worthwhile doing is to emphasize that the Nerdy Cafe is fairly limited in terms of space. So I think in order to guarantee your sort of access into it, it's important to get yourself a ticket, which you can do by going onto the SSF, Fantasy and Science Fiction Spotlight website. And there is a link there, but the tickets are only £2.49. So I mean, that's nothing. It's really just a sort of a token amount in order to ensure that we can guarantee sort of how many people get in, and we don't get so overloaded that we have to that we can't sort of cope. So it's just a way of controlling the attendance. But it's really worthwhile getting yourself a ticket and then guaranteeing that you can get in. But and it'll be open to everyone. I think from what Holly was telling me the other day, that they're putting posters around Shrewsbury now, so that lots of people will be, local people will be getting to be sort of made aware of it as well. So
I would love to be there. It's too bad that I'm on the other side of the pond there.
Scotland, Shrewsbury. Oh. Next time, mate. Next year, when Holly does all this again, next year.
That would be good.
I love the atmosphere. Like I said, I haven't been to many cons, but I just love the atmosphere and the camaraderie amongst the, all of the readers, the authors, everyone who attends. I just think it's just a phenomenal place to be, and really heartwarming. And like I said, I'm still on a high, I think, from those couple weeks that I spent in Scotland, and that's the main reason that I got to interact with so many people that, just brilliant people. So. So is this the first event? Is this the inaugural one? Okay.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think that word that you used is the crucial one. It is about camaraderie. It is that connection that you have with other people who are all doing the same thing. The online group that I sort of mentioned that Holly is sort of part of, we set it up. There's about a dozen of us on it, and we set it up purely because we're all very aware that we're operating so independently as writers, and it can be such an isolating experience, really. And so we said if we meet up on a regular basis online, we can just chat. We can put the world to rights. We can talk about issues that we're having about our latest chapter or our latest book or whatever. And we've really begun to find that that's brought this sort of camaraderie together, so that when Holly came up with this idea of the spotlight, then we all immediately piled in and said, well, yeah, come on, we can all help and do this together. So it's been very much a bonding sort of exercise, and really reinforced that camaraderie that you've talked about. So that's why I'm looking forward to going there, just to meet up with all these wonderful people.
Yeah. Simon, are you aware if this is going to continue? Is this going to be something that is it a one and done, or is this something that's going to carry on?
Well, I guess we'll see how it goes. But with the enthusiasm and all the people that we've been talking about who are coming, I very much hope it'll carry on and will become a regular thing. Whether that's, it remains to be seen, but it would be great if it could become an annual event, or
Yeah, you guys have to keep going it so at least I can get there one year, right?
Yeah.
We've got to do it for your benefit, Paul. We've got to do it for you.
Yeah, I actually recently, coincidentally, when I was at WorldCon, and thanks largely to David Green, you mentioned, and P.S. Livingston, the wonderful P.S. Livingston, I actually signed up. So now I'm a member of the British Fantasy Society.
Oh, brilliant.
So I can show myself an honorary Brit.
Cool.
Well, of course, you are. You are, mate. Yes. Yeah.
Commonwealth country, Canada, and all that. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What's the Atlantic Ocean to friends?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. No, the British Fantasy Society do amazing sort of work, and there are some fabulous people on there. So I've been talking about Pam. I've been telling Pam that she needs to get down to Shrewsbury to come and sort of join us as well. And but I think she's also just recovering from WorldCon as well, where because she was someone else, Simon, that finished it with COVID as well. So she's just been recovering from COVID as well.
From WorldCon.
From the WorldCon, yeah. Right. So it's you were lucky to escape it, Paul.
Yeah. It's sadly it was one of those
Canadian German. We're not going to get beaten.
I didn't get to WorldCon, but I think I got it from my daughters from a Taylor Swift concert when.
Yes. Concerts, the famous spreaders concerts.
Yes.
But I think it became somewhat of a badge of honor though, coming out of WorldCon. So, but again, I'm wishing you both, a very successful event at SFF Spotlight. It sounds absolutely amazing. Is there an option to attend any of the panels virtually? Can you tune in at all to any of the events?
I don't think there is at the moment. It's not something that I think has happened. I think it was a case of trying to, as Simon just said, trying to sort of see what works and whether we can sort of grow it in sort of subsequent years. So I don't think that's the case, but Holly might come in if we mention her name enough and correct us with that. But
we say her name 3 times, right?
Yes.
And spin around backwards, hold your nose, and something, she'll appear.
I don't know if anyone will be just filming them so that they can be put online later. That's always a good thing to do, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to have a sort of chat about that. I'm just really aware that Holly's doing so many things. I think one of the things that I'll sort of say it now, I think is that next year when Holly organises it again, because now that we've said that she's got to, but I think next year it'll be a case of that a lot of us will be able to do a lot more because we've got the model established, and Holly can then say, right, you do this and you do that, and she can organise us and tell us what to do. Order us around.
She's a masterful organizer. I can attest to that. And things run well under Holly's leadership. That's for sure. So exceptionally well. So, okay, now again, have a fantastic event, SFF Spotlight 24. The links to the website are also be in this video. So I want to get into a bit about both of your writing journeys. So you're both somewhat prolific novels. Just want to find out, how did that all get started for you?
Shall I go first?
Yeah, you go first, Simon.
I don't know. I guess I'm one of those people who always thought I'll be a writer one day, and always wanted to be. And when I got to about age of 30, I thought to myself, which is a long time ago now, I thought to myself, if I'm going to do that, I need to actually do some writing. It's not just going to happen magically, unfortunately. You have to write the words down. So I just started writing very short stories. And it just grew from there, really. I started writing in the early days. I could write a 1,000-word short story, and that seemed like a monumental achievement. And I thought, I don't understand how you could ever write a novel, because how can you know what happens on page 87 and on page 287? I mean, that's just impossible. But like anything in life, it's just you do it more and more, and it gets easier. And then and then I one day thought I should write a novel, and then it just carried on, really. So there was no great epiphany to it. I just started and didn't stop, I guess.
Wow, I wish my story was.
It's that easy.
Yeah. Wow. I wish it was that easy.
It depends. I mean, it's easy. It's easy to write, right? Because you just have to. It's just time and typing or writing. I mean, but I mean, getting published is a whole different thing, and it's up to you to decide what is success for you, I guess. But for me, a lot of the time, the writing is the point, and I just every now and then I think to myself, I'm going to just stop because I don't feel like doing it anymore, and then a day later, I find myself writing another story, and I just carry on.
Wow, that's amazing. And Phil, what about you? How did you fall into? Or was it all part of this very long time strategic cunning plan that you?
Cunning plan. Yeah, I was saying this to someone the other day. Thinking about back to it, I started writing when I was a teenager, and one of the things that I vividly remember was that my mum bought me this. We weren't a wealthy family by any means, but she bought me this sort of portable second-hand typewriter. I was about 14 or 15, and because I was writing everything longhand, I was just writing short stories, and that was how the whole thing started. And so when I went to university, I began writing things there, play scripts and so on, because I was studying drama. And then, being a teacher, I then began, writing stuff for my students at school, doing, sort of plays for them, enjoyed all that process. So then it got to a point where it was about 2015 when I thought I want to write a novel, and spent about 2 years researching it, which just really bogged me down. But it wasn't until I went on a writing course with a agent-led sort of writing course at Curtis Brown that gave me the confidence to actually start to put, sort of pen to paper, if you like, and start writing. And that's when he said, little bit of a plug. That's when I wrote this, and that was the first of a trilogy. And as I said to somebody on social media the other day, when you start writing a story, as a completely inexperienced writer, what's the hardest thing that you do and the stupidest thing to do? You write a trilogy. So
yeah,
I'm still writing.
Or even more stupid, you write a 7-book series.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Can I tell you something that's even more stupid than writing a trilogy, Phil? That's writing a trilogy backwards, which is what I did. So the books that I'll be reading from at Shrewsbury, the Triple Stars science fiction books,
yeah,
they were written backwards. I don't mean,
Really?
but I wrote the third one thinking, because I thought I'd written a trilogy previously, and I thought to myself, I never want to write another trilogy. That sounds so I'll just write this nice standalone science fiction novel, which I did, and then I started thinking, oh, wait a minute, I think I can see the previous novel and then the previous novel. So I wrote the third one, and then the first one, and then the second one, I think.
Oh wow!
But I hadn't published the third one at that point, so I could change stuff if I introduced new stuff in the previous two. But I wouldn't recommend doing that at all. I really wouldn't. But,
wow.
Yeah, and I keep, this is a mistake I keep making. I keep telling myself this is a standalone novel. I've just had the fourth book in a different series accepted by my publisher, and
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, that was just the other week, so that was good news. That's more fantasy, not science fiction. And I think that will be a 5-book series.
Okay.
And then I will write standalone novels.
Wow. Well, I guess you're going to be busy for a while. So can you each tell me about your books and about what you've written? I have had the privilege of reading one of Phil's books, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Unfortunately, I haven't read any of Simon's yet, but I did read The Valkyrie of Vanaheim. Very enjoyable. Yep. Have to continue with that series, but you know how TBRs are. It's just crazy. Yeah. But so please tell us about all your books and what they're about, your series, etc.
Go on, Simon.
Shall I go? So I've written the first book I wrote was a science fiction novel. It's a sort of cyberpunk future Earth novel called The Gene Hunter. That was really me learning how to write longer works, really, because I wrote 5 novellas and then just sort of put them all together and called it a novel, which worked well. I enjoyed that. Then I wrote a fantasy trilogy called the Cloven Land trilogy, which is sort of partly otherworld fantasy, partly urban fantasy, I suppose. Still probably my favorite books that I've written, set in, as I say, in other worlds, but also set in Manchester in England. Then I wrote, so then there's the Triple Stars books, which are space opera, sort of large scale galaxy spanning adventure, covering all of time and space. It sometimes felt like when I was writing it, which is a lot to cover. And then the books I've just been working on.
They are brilliant stories. They really are. I love them. They represent part of my love of science fiction and space opera, but Simon does it well. Anyway, sorry, go on, carry on.
Thank you. No, I mean your comments about them were fantastic. I was thrilled by them. But yeah, I really enjoyed writing them. I mean, they were apart from the fact that I wrote them backwards, it was just the ability to just jump around the galaxy and have I don't want to introduce any spoilers, but strange entities and beings, and it's a lot of fun. I hope anyway. But most recently, I've been writing a series of books for a press in England called Elsewhere Press. So they're urban fantasy. They're they're based around something called the Office of the Witchfinder General. So it's a sort of shadowy arm of the government that are handling threats to the realm from supernatural dangers, but set very much in modern Wales mostly, and also England. And again, they're a lot of fun to write. I've just written the 4th of those, and I'm just vaguely thinking about the 5th. But 3 of them are out, and the 4th one will be out, I guess, early next year. I guess.
Wow! Congratulations. So Simon so how many novels have you written altogether?
That's embarrassing. This is where I have to add them up in my head. Which is very, including unpublished ones. I've 14.
Wow! 14. And when did you start writing? Start publishing?
I started writing about novels about 15 years ago, I suppose. So
roughly a novel every year per se, give or take. Wow, yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, now that you put it like that, that does seem a lot. Yeah. It is probably a. Yeah, and some years the way it works out, 2 have appeared, and some years none appear. But yeah, it probably is about 1 a year on average. Yeah.
I think, and I know, obviously, depending on the genre, I have friends in the romance and mystery sphere that they put out several books a year, which is incredible. But I think for fantasy science fiction, 1 book a year is quite an impressive clip. So kudos to you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't think of myself as a fast writer at all, and I don't really understand people who do write those books every 3 months and so on. But I do find that once I get into a book, it probably takes me about 6 months to really write it and get it finished. So, but my books aren't massively long. A lot of fantasy and sci-fi books can be, huge. Obviously, mine generally about 100,000 words, sort of 300 odd pages. So,
do you write full time, Simon?
That's a very good question, Phil. I've recently retired from my job as a software developer. And I always imagined how wonderful it would be to write full time. But now that I have stopped working as a software developer, mostly, I do a bit, I'm finding all these other things to do. But no, I don't. I try and just stick to the sort of hour or 2 a day and then get on with my life, really.
Well, it sounds like you're saying hour 2 a day. Discipline as well. Like, I wish I wrote consistently an hour 2 a day. There might be weeks that go by I'm not really feeling right, but and then sometimes I write, for maniacally for a week, 2 weeks at a time. But yeah, that's fantastic. It seems like consistency is one of your trademarks, Simon, and that's a good trademark to have. So.
It's an awesome trademark. I mean, I don't really think of myself as having it, but I guess I must have, because I do just keep writing things. So, yeah, I mean, I do a lot of running as well, and I only mention this because I think there's a big crossover between writing and running, in that the more you do, the easier it gets.
Yeah.
And you kind of build up fitness and you build up muscles that you didn't know you had. And suddenly you can run 10 miles when you couldn't imagine running 10 miles. And it's the same with writing a novel, I find. You can write a novel where once that seemed an impossible thing. And so, yeah, that's...
Well, once again, kudos. It does take discipline to do both. So kudos to you on doing that. So,
I mean, I enjoy them both. It's not like I'm...
Yeah.
It's not hard. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. So Phil, tell us a bit about
your walking 10 miles. Never mind running 10 miles.
Oh, really?
Well, oh God, yeah.
I'm running a half marathon next Sunday, so I'm just.
Oh wow!
Oh, congratulations!
Oh, good luck,
We'll-
mate. Good luck.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, there was a time I did that stuff, but that time is long gone. So but kudos to you for keeping it up and continuing.
Yeah.
So
I
Wow.
love it. I do love it. But
it is addictive.
anyway, Phil, you're writing, Phil.
Yeah. Mine really started. 2018 was when I published The Bastard from Fairyland as the first book in my trilogy, which, as I say, followed on from the writing course that I was on for sort of 6 months, and it was that course that made me think, actually, perhaps I can write, and I just need to sort of to learn the tricks of the trade, as it is, almost, and doing so when you're doing so online with sort of a dozen other potential authors, and you've got an incredibly tough tutor who tells it as it is, which she did, and that did me a power of good. So as I say, I wrote Bastard of Fairyland, then realized it was turning into a trilogy, not a reverse one like Simon, but I don't know, but I think you're more of a planner, Simon, aren't you, than me? But as someone who's are you?
I'm a bit of a hybrid. As I don't really plan. I try to plan. I really try to plan, but my mind gets bored within about 10 minutes. So what I do is, for reference, I plan the beginning and the end. So I always know I've got an end point in mind, and then I just fill in the gap, really. Just make it up as I go. So I don't really plan. No.
Yeah,
I have certain.
That's the same for me.
I admire people who can plan each chapter. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you do that. But
no,
people do.
There's a whole bunch of writers that it's a conversation that you guys probably know, Dave Woolliscroft, who is a lovely guy who's now lives over in California, but a Nottingham Forest supporter, like my dad was, so that's how we got talking. But he and I have once had a conversation about how he plans his novels, and he plans them down to the finest degree. I mean, it shows in his writing because it's absolutely phenomenal. But I'm like you, Simon. I just get bored, and if I sort of find that I am committed to doing something in a particular way, at some point one of the characters will tell me, no, that's wrong. That isn't what you should be writing at this moment. I'm doing this. So whatever you're going to do, I'm going off and doing this. And I think that seems to be how I wrote. I told someone the other day that I think it actually helps no end that as a writer you have to be slightly schizophrenic, because I have these voices in my head. Honestly, Doctor,
I know.
and they do speak to me. And I'm not mad at all. But I think a lot of it comes from my acting background, because I like to inhabit the characters, I should say. So when I'm writing, I do hear the characters speak. I do think, they wouldn't do this. And that's why, I very often sort of write myself into corners, which is why I'm interested in what you were saying, Simon, that when you write yourself into a corner, sometimes I will have to spend several days, just going and doing something completely different in order to come back with a fresh idea, which sometimes means going out for a walk, which is what I did the other day, and that really helped. But the other thing which I've found has really helped is that I now write in a different genre. I write contemporary fiction.
Okay.
And so when I get stuck on, whatever story I'm writing, I'll just jump over into the other novel that I've got working on the back burner, and I'll work on that for a little while, and then come back to it. And I found that really refreshing, really, really helpful. So it's those two things.
Yeah, just to jump in. I absolutely agree with you there, Phil. I mean, I'm never writing one thing at a time. I mean, I sometimes wish I did, but I've literally started 3 other novels since I finished the one that has just been accepted, and that thing about, okay, well, if that one's reached us, if I'm stuck on that one, I'll just start writing this other one.
Yeah.
So it seems to just free up what you were doing, your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's this sort of inner editor which we all try to shut up so that we can just get on and write, and the editor keeps saying, now your characters are trapped in another world and you'll never get them out. But your subconscious doesn't care about that. The subconscious thinks of some crazy scheme for letting them escape, and you just have to let it get on with it. So
you do.
Yeah, go for a walk, write something else, go for a run, I would even suggest. And it just comes to you.
I found that one of the things that happens quite a lot these days for me is that I wake up with the idea in the middle of the night. So sometimes it's just awake and there's the idea fully formed in your head. The City of Onyx, just happened to have it with me. City of Onyx, which is my latest book that I published last year. I woke up with the first chapter of that completely clear in my head, literally page for page, almost word for word. I woke up with the first opening page, the first half dozen paragraphs written. I mean, literally, I just had to go in the next morning, go to my computer and just frantically start writing because it was all there in my head.
Yeah.
And I never changed it. That was exactly what is actually in the book now. Weird, but that's how I think your subconscious works. It's to find the right avenue to get out.
At its best, I find when writing isn't always like that, right? Writing is very often a slog and a word by word trudge. But when that's happened and the words have come to your subconscious, then you just have to write them down, and you're not conscious of any effort involved in doing that.
Yeah,
it feels to me like I'm just the typist,
yes,
and I can't quick enough for this voice in my head.
Absolutely.
Write this down or you forget it.
Yeah,
and it's a sort of state of flow, I guess, and it's a lovely experience. And I wish it was always like. But absolutely, it isn't always.
Flow is the word that I like to use. The words really do just flow, don't they? And it's like you can't type fast enough very often in order to do that. And when that doesn't happen, when that flow stops, for me, that's the point of, okay, there's something wrong somewhere. I've got to go back and look at it again. I've got to rethink something. The chapter's wrong or whatever. And sometimes I'll just think, actually, perhaps the character's telling me something that I need to start listening to the character a lot more. Yeah. And those voices in the head.
The other thing I do, this sounds a bit like I'm mad, and I'm pretty sure I'm not. Is I don't think anyway. So I know this isn't happening, and I know for sure this isn't happening, but I walk around, if I'm stuck or I'm not sure where a story's going, I just walk around in my normal life, and something around me in the universe will tell me what it is I need to do next. Now, I know that's not real. It's just magical thinking. It's just me being open to influences and
absolutely
looking for connections that I may not look for otherwise. But it feels like somebody I meet in the street or I hear on the radio, somebody will just say a sentence or a phrase, and I'll think, thank you, universe. That's what I need to do.
Absolutely.
Which is a lovely thing to happen as well. Although, again, that's kind of a bit psychopathic as well.
Let's just say, as writers, we all have a few mental, I won't say deficiencies, but let's just say issues. Issues, I think to sit down and write a novel and to put your characters typically through pain and trauma and to create all these problems, these fictional problems for people. And I think you got to be a little bit.
Yeah.
But in a good way, only in a good way.
Yeah.
It's
because
hard
usually you always put them right in the end, don't you? That's the crucial thing. I mean, okay, not for everybody. The people that you murder, yes, okay, it doesn't turn out quite so well for them. but for your main characters, perhaps, life is a little bit kinder by the end of the story.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
should have said that earlier on.
I do feel guilty sometimes as I put them through the things they go through. I mean, which is weird because they don't exist, right?
Yes.
They're just in my head. But still, you think I find myself apologizing to them, and it's just like, why am I apologizing to myself? It doesn't make any sense. But,
We do care about our characters. We fall in love with them, and we worry about them. We fret over their trials and tribulations, and I mean, honestly, it's just and I think, I think we've talked about this before. A lot of writers, and I'm sure you have in your writers groups, and just in general, that it is, I think, sometimes cathartic as well for a lot of us, this whole writing thing we do, right? And and that's not a bad thing either. Because again, you're putting it somewhere where, in a way, it's almost like a safe little place locked away where you can kind of open it and close it and put it down and pick it up, and so.
A writer has to work from experience, don't they? You can't make things up that your mind hasn't at some point processed what it means. And I think that one of the things that a conversation again I've had with a couple of writers in the past is that I'm writing very different stories now to the kind of stories I would have written 20 years ago, 30 years ago, because I think I've just got a lot more wisdom that just comes from age, or old age in my case. But I think that brings you, sort of the kind of thinking processes that you've worked out what all of those things mean. So when you do something for a character, you've got an idea of what the consequences are going to be.
I agree with that completely. I think that's why it's important to start writing as soon as you can, really, because the books that I would have written when I was 20, if I'd written them, but I didn't. I was too busy. I don't know what I was doing, enjoying myself, I guess. But those books would have been radically different to the books I write now because I'm older. But I'm not saying better or worse, but different. So you do. It's kind of, if you want to be a writer, you have to try and do it consistently, I think.
Yes.
So that you get all those different books which represent all the different phases of your life, really. So,
and I think it takes time as well to find your voice, because one of the things that I was on a radio show that's based in Ireland. Where are we? Last week. So I was reading a couple of extracts, and one of the questions that the interviewer asked me was about the journey of my writing. And I said that I think one of the things I found that surprises me most is the journey I've taken in terms of finding my writer's voice. And I think I've begun to find it now in the last couple of books that I've written. And when I look back at the first, the tone, the voices are utterly different. And that, again, I think is an evolving thing.
Yeah, it's true. I very often think about, when I think about this stuff, I think about rock bands that I like and how they, their early albums are maybe a bit raw, but have a certain energy to them that later, more refined albums, which are maybe better music, but don't quite have the same edge to them. But it's an evolution, you get better at some things and you lose some things. But all of those albums, and hopefully all of the books that we write are good, if that's the word, have been worth writing and are worth reading and have interesting things to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It was interesting what you said earlier about confidence, Phil, about having the confidence to write and call yourself a writer almost. And for me, that was short stories that allowed me to do that. I still struggle to think of myself as a writer for some reason, but just be able to write a short story and then get that published just felt like an amazing affirmation, really, that I can write. And then after that, it's just a matter of repeating it, really. So short stories have always been hugely important to me, although I still write novels and short stories. Short stories were the way in they were the gateway drug, if you like. And I can't imagine not writing them. They've been so good to me.
Wow.
Well, you said earlier, just earlier on, about that when you decide that you're not going to write something and then stop. I find that it's 24 hours, 48 if I'm lucky, and it's like, no, I've got to write. It just, there is that urge is just there. You've just got to write something.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I presumably it will stop at some point, but hasn't yet. And...
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's definitely a good thing.
I agree.
So, gentlemen, who are some of your writing influences? Who are some of the authors that inspire you and that make you want to write better and have made you want to write in the first place?
Gosh, so many. I mean, it's I grew up reading, as I said, Le Guin, but Asimov and Clarke and Tolkien and all the classics that we all have read, I'm sure. And just never stopped, really. I mean, I don't just read science fiction and fantasy. I mean, I love sort of, I don't know what we call it, realist fiction. Is that? I don't even know what that is, really. But just whatever I could get my hands on, really. So I read very widely. I read whatever's to hand. So, but I would always come back to Le Guin, I guess, as my main influence, just for her humanity, basically.
Yeah. Sorry, I've got a frog in the throat at the moment, which won't move. Arthur C. Clarke for me definitely had a huge impact on me. Starting my, as I said, when I began writing as a kid, it was reading Arthur C. Clarke stories and his short stories, especially. Richard Morgan is the guy that I think I wrote Bastard from Fairyland after reading his Land Fit for Heroes trilogy. And that just had such a profound effect upon me in terms of what fantasy meant, what characters should be, the whole idea of characters with faults that need to be resolved at some point by the time you get to the end of the story. And that sits with me now. Every one of my main characters are always people with major faults. There's something seriously wrong somewhere that means that they're broken people. And the story is about putting them right. And again, that goes back to my acting background. It's finding those people who are, struggling in some way and inhabiting them. And that's what I loved about what Morgan does with Rengaleskith, that that is a seriously damaged character, and you care for that person so much that there were so many times in the three stories where I'd have to stop because I was absolutely blubbing like a child, that it just had that effect on me. So he particularly, I think, has had a massive impact, and just a wonderful writer. But like Simon's just said, there are so many people that that I read, and when you were talking about your sort of TBR being so long drawn out, it's exactly the same. Now I keep seeing writer friends publishing books and thinking, oh God, that looks good. Oh, I must get that. And thinking, right, okay, I'll add that to the list, and list that long, and you just can't get through with them fast enough.
Yeah. That's definitely true. I think as well, I'm sure both of you, I know it's hard to find time to read, and we have these big TBRs, these huge TBRs of authors whose work we want to get to. I want to read Simon's work, of course, and I want to read more of Phil's. Who are some of the authors out there that you really want to read, you haven't got to yet, but maybe it's been laying on the TBR for a while and kind of hanging out there, and you're hoping to get to it sometime in the next millennium?
Oh gosh.
So many. I mean, a lot a lot of the ones that Phil mentioned before, are on my TBR list. Because like you were saying, you hear a name and somebody says, "I love this book." You've been saying books you love in this stream, and I'll be adding them to my TBR list. There are just too many to even think of, really.
Yeah, yeah.
It's only going to go to Shrewsbury.
Yeah, I tell you what, to be patriotic for a moment, Paul. One of the ones that really stands out for me, the very first name that sprang to mind, is another Canadian author, which is my brain just as about to say it goes straight out. Bengali.
Bengali, yes. He's an ex-Brit, I believe.
Yes, he is.
Yes.
Yeah, and decided to sort of move over there to Canada. But he is one of the ones, and there's just so many of his books that I keep thinking I would love to launch into that one in a sort of, and again, they're just so incredibly unique. It's the Holly Tinsley sort of factor. I think again there is a sort of a unique quality to what Ben writes that I think I've got to sort of investigate. So that's one name that immediately came to mind. Yeah.
Highly recommended. I've only read one of his books, but really enjoyed it. So yeah, highly recommended. Very talented and prolific, and in the in the indie fantasy world, I believe one of the iconic, long-standing,
absolutely,
well-respected authors that's been writing for a long time. So
I read an article in The Guardian, which is one of the newspapers over here in the UK, Paul, quite a sort of major one, that was about indie authors, sort of generally. And they interviewed Ben as, one of the people who is the, definitive original indie author. And he had some really fascinating stuff to say about, the business, about publishing generally, about having that breadth of material that you have to have in order to qualify as a writer. So some really good. But I think he's the person that so many people consider as one of the original indie authors, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. Him, Dirk Ashton, Bengali, Rob J. Hayes, Michael R. Fletcher.
Yeah,
a lot of Brits on that list.
Yeah,
So,
we're not bad, are we? We're not bad. Yeah.
And I think it's funny. I'm not sure about either one of you, but for me, it's just incredible how my TBR has evolved to that indie authors dominate my TBR now. Whereas before, obviously I didn't know what indie was. I became an indie author myself, of course, eventually. But there was a time where I didn't know that indie existed, didn't know what it was. And now look at my TBR and most of the books that I'm aspiring to read are indie books.
I said this on a thing the other day, actually, that I think that indie, again, it's part of what Mark Lawrence has done with Spiffbo. Is that the indie author paradigm now has become something that is so varied that it would never have happened via traditional publishing, because traditional publishing is so risk averse, so very much sort of stuck in the 20th century, in my opinion. And what indie authors are doing is inventing so many different approaches. They are subverting tropes, they are subverting genres. We've talked about what Ben is doing, what Holly is doing, what Rob Hayes is doing. These are people who are doing something that are so varied and unique that I don't think the traditional publishing arm would ever cope with that kind of diversity. I posted some research that I came across just last week about the sort of self-publishing industry as it works now for 2024, which is on my website, the Speculative Faction. He said, giving a quick plug. One of the things that it talked about there that research has shown is that self-publishing has got the largest proportion of LGBTQ plus authors now in the whole of the publishing industry. It's where everyone seems to be focused now, because they can do what they like. They can write the kind of stories that they want to write without the limitations that are imposed upon them by traditional publishing. And I think that's really very exciting. And I think it's the future of where indie publishing will go. But what do I know?
No, I mean, I agree. I come back to, I talked about rock bands before, and I think everything you've just said is kind of true of the music biz as well. You know, we had the big labels, and they would carefully nurture certain groups, and there would be they produce good stuff, but it was formulaic a lot of the time. And then you had punk rock, and I'm a sort of child of that era, really, where people just threw that out, did their own thing. Then that became the mainstream, because everyone loved it. And then meanwhile, other people were doing new stuff at the periphery, and that became the mainstream. That's where all the interesting stuff tends to emerge, really.
It is.
And I think that's true in writing, and always has been. And I think, if you look back in history, before we had the publishing industry, the indie model is what people did, really. They would write. I'm just reading, one of the books I'm reading at the moment is Tom Jones, the sort of 18th century classic. I mean, he was obviously a successful author, but they would just write those books and then just put them out themselves, and then just, and that's what we're doing, really.
It is, yeah. Charles Dickens was doing it, and getting it all sort of serialized before anybody ever thought about putting it all together into books and publishing it. It goes back for centuries.
Yeah, it does. So
now I believe we're taking over. We're taking over,
we are.
The book publishing world. So and again, as you both made some exceptional points, that where else can you get some of the unique, the totally unique and fresh perspectives and stories that you get in the indie world? I challenge you to find it elsewhere in the publishing landscape. It is just phenomenal. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing is that with the success of a lot of indie authors in fantasy and sci-fi and in romance and in mysteries, I mean, those authors, a lot of them are quite successful, selling hundreds and hundreds of thousands of copies. But certainly, speaking for the fantasy/sci-fi indie sphere in my little corner of universe, when I look at the Ryan Cahills of the world, and I mean, even you go to the Will Whites, New York Times bestseller, independent authors, I think now people are realizing it's very viable to do it as an indie, and with the compensation, with the royalties, if you do well, you can do really well. And why, for some people it's becoming very much a choice, right? I think
it is. But I think the stigma has gone, that if you're a self-published author, the quality of your work isn't very good. That's gone because indie authors, we're employing editors, we're employing book designers, we're doing all the things that the trad publishers do. And, because the quality has to be incredibly high. It certainly does in science fiction and fantasy. If you aren't good quality, you get hammered, absolutely hammered by readers. And the reviews that you get on Amazon will testify to that. So you have got to be good, otherwise you just don't get anywhere at all. I think that's absolutely right. But also the other thing, the conversation I was having with Pete McLean a few months ago, is that getting that if you are an indie author, you still retain control of your own ideas, your IP, and that that ownership is something that can very often get lost in traditional publishing. You can lose so much, that you get given away in contracts that you don't perhaps understand, and lose out. Yeah. So I think that's another reason for me why I prefer being an indie author, is I control everything, and that's important to me.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I'd even go so far as to say that for a lot of newer authors getting into the indie genre, they can't foresee going anywhere else. When I, I've published in the last 3-4 years. That's when I started, and I think when I started, a lot of my contemporaries were still on the fence. Okay, well, maybe one day a book deal. That's what I'm aspiring to. Or they were pitching. They had a lot of other work they were pitching on the side. But if they didn't get an agent or get a book deal, they would publish their indie stuff. But now I think again it is becoming the preferred choice for a lot of authors is just going indie and not doing the whole querying.
That research I mentioned again showed that authors under the age of 35, the vast majority of them, the largest proportion of them, immediately go to indie rather than the trad model, because they consider it's more responsive, it allows them the freedom that they want, and so they don't go via the sort of thing of submitting to agents and publishers and so on, because that's just not who they are. So it's it's the whole Gen Z argument, isn't it? It's they want freedom.
I would just put a pitch in. I agree with all of that clearly, because I'm an indie author, but the Office of the Witchfinder General books I was talking about are through a press called Elfwen Press, who are a small UK press, and those books are with them because they love them, but also because if you find a good indie press, a good small press, you can kind of get the best of both worlds. So you're not just you're not just a small cog in a big machine. I know everybody who works there, and their friends, and that you're given complete freedom to do what you want.
I think you're right, Simon.
I think they're doing the editing and they're doing the cover design with my input. So there is I don't think it's a one size fits all necessarily, but most of my books are indie, and I imagine will continue to be. But you can find your own ways of doing it.
You can, and I think that's a really good point to make, actually. That there are small presses out there who are doing really creative things that are the allies to the indie author in many ways. So I think you're right. Yeah,
they are, and they say we a lot of the books we publish are books that big publishers wouldn't be interested in because they don't follow the formula or whatever they're after, but are interesting books, so they like to put those out. So there is space for that, and I'm not pretending that if somebody didn't offer me a massive deal with a major publisher tomorrow, I wouldn't say no. I'm an indie author.
My integrity.
I would say yes.
Exactly.
However you get them out, the important thing is to write them, right? And
you're right.
Doing it.
You're right, and we're certainly not disparaging. We all have friends that are traditionally published authors that are fantastic authors, and they're quite successful, and we're certainly not disparaging that. But I do think that. Yeah, and I do think that you look at there's a good example you mentioned. I think Phil, you mentioned Stephen Arion. He's now self-publishing, his most recent books. I think in the future, more people will do a hybrid kind of mix. That some things they'll try and keep in a traditional stream of stress, especially if you start out that way. And then a lot of trad authors are going indie, and they're going to have a line of books that are all indie, but then they'll continue to publish traditionally with their publishers, through their agents, and it's a really exciting time in the industry where I think it's almost, we talked about this. I've talked about this on several podcasts. I can't remember when I gave the author credit. I can't remember who said it, but they said that it was a golden age in terms of publishing in some ways, and it really is. And indie is a big part of that. But the fact that there's all these methods, whether it's small press or hybrid or big press or full indie or anything in between, that Simon raised the extra point. Just get the damn book out, and somehow by hook or by crook, and
I always think about. Sorry, Simon, go on.
I was just to finish off that point, that I think there's strength in diversity. If you only sell books through one channel in one way, and then that channel goes away, you're a bit stuffed, really. So do it. I used to worry about, should I do this? Should I be this sort of author or that sort of author? And now I just want to be all of those sorts.
Yes.
All at once, basically.
I can't echo that enough. I went through that very same thing in the last year when, having sort of, published a couple of novels in contemporary fiction and suddenly finding, oh, what kind of writer am I? I don't know any longer. And, identity crisis or what? And in the end, it's a case of, thinking, I just write books. That's,
yeah.
That's it. But the thing I was just going to say, just following up what you were just saying, Paul, is that thinking about, people like Rob Hayes, who is, prolific, he is very much along the same lines as Simon, these churning out books, year on year, and they're all fantastic quality. That got him an agent, and a really good agent as well, a real expert agent, because, he proved himself. And I think that's another way forward as an indie author, is that if you can get enough stuff out there, it's good quality, and you become a really popular writer, with a really good following, then you're not the risk that many traditional publishers might see you as a debut author. So there is a lot to be said for getting your stuff out there, getting established, getting your name known, and then getting the big bucks.
And no greater example. I think, Phil, you hit the nail on the head. Simon, Phil, those are a lot of salient points there. No greater example can be seen, perhaps, in the fantasy milieu than you mentioned from Mark Lawrence's self-published fantasy blog off. There are so many semi-finalists and finalists and winners that, specifically because of the notoriety of the game through that competition, they've gone on to acquire agents and book and traditional book deals and have their indie books, taken off of the Amazon and republished with a big five publisher. Like there's quite a few now.
Yeah, there are.
Long, so
it's the way to go. The way to go.
Yep.
So I wanna as we're wrapping up here, oh my gosh, I can't believe that an hour and 15 minutes has gone by. The time just absolutely flies. We could talk for hours, I'm sure, but I want to respect your time. I know it's getting later on that side of the pond, so but I want to give you both an opportunity to each let us know where to find you in the social media space, where to buy your books, or anything else you'd like to plug. If you have any upcoming releases or projects you'd like to plug or replug, please take a bit to do that as well.
Okay, go on, Simon.
The website is the best place to go, I guess, which is just Simon Kewin, SIMONKEWIN.co.uk. I guess we can put that in the notes, and then all my books are there, the indie published ones and the elsewhere books as well. So like I said, I've just, this fourth book in the Witchfinder series is coming out late this year, probably next year. And I've just finished another science fiction book, and I'm just thinking what to do with that, which is so this whole conversation's been interesting. And then I probably will start thinking about the next book to write soon. Yeah, the website. The website.
Excuse me, Phil?
I think it's a case of if you go into Google and type Phil Parker's speculative faction, not fiction, but faction, then all of my books are on there, along with my blog posts as well. And so there are sort of links to my books on Amazon there. So fairly sort of straightforward. And I think City of Onyx is the latest one, but I'm about to publish two more actually within the next month. I'm hoping to get one launched at Shrewsbury in point of fact. Right. Hopefully we'll be ready sort of by then. And I've just registered the fact that what Simon told me a little while ago is getting spookily very close to what I'm just about to publish, because that book is also about the British Secret Service and fantasy, mythological characters. Oh God, copyright.
Yeah, we talked about having some sort of crossover, didn't we?
We did. Mate.
Oh, that sounds fascinating. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in Shrewsbury.
We will, mate.
Well, I have some serious FOMO. I wish I was going to be there in Shrewsbury, but again, I wish you both all the best with a successful SFF Spotlight 24. And thanks so much I'm so honored for both of you coming on the show. It's been a blast.
Thank you.
And to address with your time.
Thank you very much, mate.
Quickly for me, P.L. Stewart, author of the Drunk Kingdom Saga, www.plstewart.com, and 4 books out currently, with the 5th book, A Pack of Wolves, coming in the spring of 2025. And here, the channel, of course, the Drunk Kingdom Saga 7847 on YouTube. And you can see great interviews with fabulous creatives like this on this channel, including my 6 Elementals author interview feature. And of course, page chewing with my amazing and talented co-host Taylor. Maybe between the pages, there'll be more of those coming at you tomorrow on Sunday. So once again, my sincere thanks to my guests, Simon and Phil. And thanks so much for joining me again. Go to the SFF Spotlight 24 website. I'll post the links below. Check out the books of these phenomenal authors. Buy their books. Check them out on social media. Follow them. And if you can get to Shrewsbury, get there for SFF Spotlight 24. It sounds like it's going to be absolutely phenomenal. So signing off, everybody, from the Drunk Kingdom Saga 7847. And thank you again, Phil and Simon. And we will talk to you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.